8 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. The committee is meeting to study Canada Revenue Agency's effort to combat tax avoidance and evasion. Today's meeting is taking place in the hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25 of this year, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. And I think we all know on here that only the person speaking shows up when we're in session. With that, we are fortunate today to have the Minister of National Revenue, the Honourable Diane Lavoudier here. She'll have a few opening remarks, about 7 minutes or around about there's worth, I gather. And thank you, Minister. Not all ministers give us their remarks the night before in both official languages. We appreciate that. And with the minister as well is Ted Gallivan, Assistant Commissioner, Compliance Program Branch, who has been here many, many a time, and we welcome him as well. So we will start with the minister.
Point of order.
And go ahead. Point of order, Mr. Kelly.
Really quick, Mr. Chair, and I agree with you. I do thank the minister for providing her remarks ahead of time. That was thoughtful of her to do so, and I have read them. I'm sure everybody else has as well, and I wonder if we might dispense with having them read into the record and go straight to questions.
No, I don't believe so, Mr. Kelly. What I find is the ministers do like to have an opportunity to make their statement, and I think it's one of the reasons why we don't get them if we take that opportunity away from them. So I'm going to, on this one, allow the minister to make her statement and thank her for her courtesy. It gives us as members times to better prepare a question. So, Madam Minister.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to my colleagues. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity before I give my statement to wish you a very happy birthday. So, thank you for inviting me today to provide some details on Canada Revenue Agency's strategy to combat tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. Let me begin by saying that the Government of Canada and the CRA are firmly committed to combating tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance on all fronts, and we are all committed to making things much more difficult for those who choose not to meet their tax obligations. Since 2016, the Government of Canada has made investments that have helped provide the CRA with better data, better methodology, and ultimately better results. In particular, these investments have enabled the agency to develop a strategy that promotes global data sharing. Let's face it, tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance are complex global problems. The CRA is working with international partners through various multilateral organizations, including the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and its Forum on Tax Administration. And I'm pleased to see that Mr. Bob Hamilton, who is a commissioner of the CRA, was appointed to the position of chair of the FTA in August 2020. As a result of its modern and collaborative strategy, Canada is member to 93 tax treaties and 24 international tax information exchange agreements. In fact, Canada is one of the more than 70 countries that exchange information through the country-by-country reporting system. In addition, Canada participates in the Electronic Funds Transfer Reporting Program, which is related to international electronic funds transfers over $10,000. And with the implementation of the Common Reporting Standard in 2016, Canada, alongside nearly 100 other jurisdictions, benefits from financial institution data that identifies financial accounts held by non-resident clients for tax purposes. With these improved resources and tools, the CRA is now able to focus on large multinationals, high net worth networks, the underground economy, cryptocurrency, and real estate transactions. But it is thanks to the investments made by the Government of Canada that the CRA is now seeing these signs of success. In recent years, the CRA has assessed the equivalent of more than $12 billion each year through audits, more than 60% of which were related to tax avoidance by large multinationals and aggressive tax planning by high net worth individuals. And I must note that these investments have generated approximately $5 billion in additional federal tax revenue as of March 2021. Additionally, the CRA's Criminal Investigations Program has enhanced its ability to investigate the most serious tax crimes. It is important to note that the agency investigates complex cases in collaboration with its partners in the Department of Finance and the Department of Justice and Public Safety through the RCMP to close what may be perceived as legal loopholes. And I must remind you that the CRA has shifted its focus to more hard-hitting investigations, which result in more jail time and higher fines. However, we must never forget that tax evasion often involves very complex domestic and international money transfer structures, which require the CRA to complete lengthy and time-consuming intelligence gathering processes. I also want to note that we are increasingly seeing high net worth taxpayers using the court system when they are audited in order to avoid providing documents and information to the agency. And I want to emphasize that the volume of complex litigation is up significantly from previous years, with approximately 3,000 active cases considered high level in complexity. As a result, first announced in 2020 in the 2020 Fall Economic Statement and confirmed in Budget 2021, the Government of Canada has committed to invest $606 million over 5 years, beginning in 2021-22, to continue this complex work. These investments will close a compliance gap for high net worth individuals, strengthen technical support for high-risk audits, improve the CRA's ability to identify tax evasion involving trusts, improve the CRA's ability to stop fraudulent or unjustified GST, HST refunds, and finally, improve the Criminal Investigations Program. In addition to the financial investments from Budget 2021, legislative changes will also be put in place to strengthen the rules on transfer pricing, oral testimony, base erosion, and profit shifting and mandatory disclosure rules. Before I conclude, I'd like to wish the chair of this committee, Mr. Wayne Easter, a very happy retirement. I want to thank you personally for your outstanding work on behalf of Canadians. We will miss you. Mr. Chair, I am proud to say that the Government of Canada and the CRA have shown determination and innovation in creating effective and proactive approaches to identifying those who avoid paying their fair share of taxes or who are taking steps to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, and thank you for the comments that sometimes make me wonder with the comments I've got lately. Maybe a person should retire more often. Anyway, thank you for your statement. The lineup for the first round of questions is Mr. Kelly and Mr. Lawrence. We'll split the first 6 minutes, followed by Ms. Zerowitz, Mr. St. Marie, and Mr. Julian. Mr. Kelly, I believe it's you up first, or it might be Mr. Lawrence. Go ahead.
It's Mr. Lawrence.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, you're up first.
Thank you. And I can agree with the chair. I would certainly like to see more Liberals retire. Thanks very much. And my question is obviously to the minister. The inability to collect revenue from tax evaders, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $25 billion a year, has real consequence. And given that our debt now, Minister, is over $1 trillion, that the government's debt to GDP ratio will exceed 50%, and the government has shown little, if any, ability to control spending, and despite raising taxes on many hardworking Canadians and business owners, has shown also a very poor record of increasing revenue. In fact, zero record of it. And no doubt that's partially due to, as I mentioned, billionaire evaders and Liberal friends avoiding taxes. Will the minister finally come clean today and announce when the Liberals will be putting a tax on one of the few tax shelters left to middle-class Canadians, that being their homes? Because otherwise, why would they be tracking the sale of principal residence if not to eventually tax it?
Minister.
Mr. Chair, as I said, dealing with fraudsters in Canada and abroad is a priority for our government. In the budget 2021, we've made a lot of investments, and the political proposals have been very favorably received. I hope, Mr. Chair, that my colleague will adopt our budget to enable us to go forward with this and to serve Canadians well. Thank you.
You're muted, Philip.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Minister. And just want to ask some questions. As I said, not getting income from tax evaders has consequences. And so a couple of questions that I would just like the numerical responses to. How many CERB recipients have you identified as ineligible, and how many millions of dollars have you collected from fraudulent CERB benefits?
Minister. You're muted. There you go.
Yes, Mr. Chair. What I would tell my colleague is that before we're able to account for the CERB payments, we're going to wait for tax season to be finished, and then we will be able to rectify any information. But our government was very proud to be able to help Canadians at the start of the pandemic. And I would tell my colleague that it would have been much more costly for Canadians if our government had not intervened. Thank you.
To Mr. Lawrence.
Oh, Mr. Kelly, I'll hand over to Mr. Kelly.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, you're on.
Okay, thank you for being here, Minister. Nice to see you again. So, in 2018, the Auditor General reported that your agency treated offshore filers differently than treated tax filers with offshore accounts differently than it treated Canadians without offshore accounts. Is that still the case at your agency?
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. I would tell my colleague that if I look back in 2013, 2014, the CRA only conducted 43 audits for tax avoidance. But in the past year, we did over 1,100 audits, Mr. Chair.
I asked, Minister, I asked you, does your agency still treat Canadians with offshore accounts differently than tax filers without offshore accounts?
Minister.
Mr. Chair, the CRA deals with people fairly. We treat all Canadians fairly. That's one of the very principles of the agency. The clients are at the heart of all of our concerns, and we provide them with the best service possible, and we ensure that everyone pays its due share.
Let me go back to Mr. Kelly.
do you think that it's fair for a Canadian without an offshore tax avoidance plan or offshore accounts to be given 90 days and automatically lose a deduction if they can't produce documents, whereas if you have an offshore account, to be given months or years to comply with requests for information? This is right from the Auditor General. I'm not making this up. This was 3 years ago that this report came out. I want to know if that's still the practice. And based on your last answer, I'd really like you to comment and tell us whether you think that's fair or not.
Madam Minister.
Mr. Chair, our government respects the independent status of the agency. I'm not here to provide instructions to the agency and to carry out certain audits. I do not intervene in these audits. This is part and parcel of the agency's process. But if my colleague wants to have more information, more of this administration type issues, I would refer the question to my colleague, Mr. Gallivan, who can respond.
I think factually, a more complex audit will take more time. And factually, when the CRA has the onus of proof and needs to gather evidence that'll withstand a challenge in court, it does take more time because we think it's in the Crown's best interest. So that's what the OAG observed. They observed in the higher complexity cases, we did allow more time to get the information because we needed that information to collect the taxes owed.
Well, the Auditor General
last question, Pat. We're a little over, but that's okay.
Well, the Auditor General observed that this was actually unfair. That Canadians that didn't have offshore accounts were automatically denied a claim or a deduction if they couldn't produce documents in 90 days. And what I would like to know is, has there been any progress made in creating some more fairness to Canadian taxpayers who will automatically lose their deduction in 90 days compared to an offshore filer that can, with impunity, defy a request for documents by the CRA?
You want to take that?
I'd like the Minister to answer that.
Okay,
Mr. Gallivan's been here before. We haven't had the Minister here in a while. The Minister can answer the question, please.
Minister.
Mr. Chair, since Mr. Kelly is asking administrative questions, and my role as a Minister of Revenue is not to play an administrative role. When the Conservatives were in office, they didn't hesitate to intervene in the integrity of the system. So if the gentleman would like to have a proper answer, I would refer him to Mr. Gallivan for a response.
If you got a very quick one, Mr. Gallivan, I'll give it to you, but very quick.
Again, I would say the discrepancy in time allowed is driven by the complexity of the case and the burden of proof, as opposed to any type of preference or softness on the part of CRA.
Okay, on to Ms. Zurowitz, be followed by Mr. St. Marie. Julie?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to say a warm welcome to the Minister for being here today. And Mr. Gallivan, welcome to you for returning to our committee. There's a false narrative that's put forward by the opposition that our federal Liberal government has done nothing to tackle tax evasion and tax avoidance. And we heard from Mr. Gallivan that we've actually made a significant investment over since 2015 in terms of tackling tax avoidance and tax evasion. $444 million in 2016, $523 million in 2017, $90.6 million in 2018, $150.8 million in 2019, and an additional $304 million in this year's budget. So significant investment. We also heard that significant investment of over $1 billion has resulted, as you mentioned, Minister, in over $5 billion of identified additional tax avoidance coming into our coffers. In addition, we've also heard that there's an international consortium of investigative journalists that do a bit of a ranking. They're the ones that broke the Panama Papers, and they've ranked Canada 9 out of 80 in the world, so among the top in terms of actually being able to tackle these issues on a global scale. So I want to say a huge thanks to you, Minister, for your leadership, a huge thanks for the leadership at the CRA, for the extraordinary efforts and work that they have done. So thank you. My first question is to truly appreciate our efforts and how far we've actually come. Can you take a few moments To add a little context to our government's efforts to fund the fight against tax evasion by describing the situation at the Canada Revenue Agency when you took over as minister in 2015 after nearly a decade of conservative cuts.
Minister.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. And I do agree that when it comes to tax evasion, it's very difficult for the state. It's a serious issue. It's a complicated issue. It takes a lot of time to look into these matters. And the problem is very deep. When wealthy people have the ability to pay for the best teams, the best lawyers. But what we've done with respect to the Panama Papers, with the more than $1 billion was invested into this, 900 Canadians were identified. We had 160 investigations that are currently underway and more than 200 audits that have now been concluded. So we provided tools and means to the agency so that it could intervene in this whole tax evasion file. The Conservative government didn't view this as a priority. Mr. Jean-Pierre Blackburn even said that tax evasion wasn't a priority for Conservatives.
Minister, I'm assuming you finished? Yes. Okay. So my next question is the following. Minister, as we speak here today, the Conservative Party is filibustering Budget 2021, and they're not only putting the continuation of COVID emergency support programs into danger, but they're also putting into danger a lot of the additional dollars. And I mentioned it's $304.1 million that's allocated in Budget 2021. They've put all of that, they're putting all of that at risk in our fight to continue to tackle tax evasion, tax avoidance. Can you go into detail about why passing Budget 2021 is critical? And how would the fight against tax evasion be harmed if the Conservatives continue to hold it up?
Monsieur le Président.
This is an important question, Mr. Chair, that my colleague has put forward. All the work that was begun at the agency has to continue. In the 2021 budget, we have a proposal to eliminate loopholes that enable people to pay tax, to refrain from paying taxes in Canada. We have $4 million to modernize and improve the agency's capacity to take measures against tax evasion. And as a next step, we want to modernize and improve the general rules with respect to tax avoidance. What really bothers me is that I hear Conservatives talk about us in a negative fashion, but I can tell you that since 2016, I can tell you that before that, it was the Conservatives who were protecting their little friends, and that they did nothing to deal with these wealthy people who had the means to pay for the best lawyers. They're the ones that were protecting their little friends, Mr. Chair, and not us on our side. We want to ensure, on a point of order.
Order, who's it from? I didn't hear it. Mr. Julian.
De ma part, Monsieur Président.
The Conservatives haven't been in office for 6 years, so we would really like the minister to answer these questions rather than give these partisan speeches.
You have about 50 seconds left between the two of you, Ms. Zerwitz.
Well, maybe just based on that question, because as was already mentioned, over $1 billion have been invested into tackling tax avoidance and tax evasion, and that is recent. I would give an opportunity in the remaining seconds to ask the minister to take a few minutes to describe the impact of our government's investments in the fight against tax evasion.
Minister, 30 seconds or less.
Mr.
Chair, in 2019-2020, we conducted over 1,100 audits. In 2013-2014, there were 43 audits that were conducted. So we can see that our work is yielding results.
Great. We'll go on. I'm hearing somebody. We'll go on to Mr. St. Marie, followed by Mr. Julian. I believe you're in the room. Mr. St. Marie, go ahead. Floor is yours. 6 minutes.
Oui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, would like to wish you a happy birthday, Wayne. I'd like to start with a statement, and then I will ask my questions. So good afternoon, Madam Minister. Thank you very much for coming here this afternoon. For some time now, the committee has been working on the issue of tax evasion and avoidance, particularly on KPMG's tax schemes, who put together a product enabling certain clients to not pay taxes. In the light of the internal documents regarding this planning that was submitted to the committee on May 17th, 2016 by KPMG, we can see that this was a type of tax evasion. All of these problems are super complicated, as you pointed out in your statement. Just as an example, today we could read in La Presse, and I quote, CRA data shows that the recent efforts to fight tax evasion on the part of wealthy Canadians have led to no charges or convictions. The same article it was reported on CTV. Experts have told us that there's this feeling of impunity with respect to the government and the agency amongst those people who use tax havens and tax specialists that create these schemes. We are told that to put a halt to this type of behavior, that the United States had brought out the heavy artillery when it came to KPMG. There was an IRS investigation. There were penalties, criminal charges of fraud and conspiracy against the company and its leaders, and they were even accused of being a criminal organization. Here, nothing like that. The agency has proposed this voluntary disclosure program, and the clients that don't accept, well, nothing's been resolved yet. Experts remind us that it's not possible to control what we can't see. Unfortunately, the CRA does not have access to all the information to conduct its audits. For example, KPMG is using the courts now to avoid having to share information with the CRA. The experts denounce the appearance of impunity and inequity for wealthy clients and these firms that create these schemes. They hide their information from the CRA, and then they go before the court. At the committee, it is extremely difficult to obtain responses to our questions to shed light on this whole matter. We've even had witnesses who refuse to appear despite the fact that they have been summoned by the committee. And that's no joke. I repeat, it's important to shed light on this whole issue and to get to the heart of the matter. We have to be able to implement legislation, regulations, a process and parameters to put a halt to this tax evasion. That's why I'm asking you, Madam Minister, to start a public inquiry into the schemes created by KPMG that enabled Canadian taxpayers using gifts or other ploys to not have to include this money on their income tax statements, and this was income that was coming from the Isle of Man and for that matter any other jurisdiction stipulated in Section 231.4 of the Tax Act. So, Madam Minister, would you start this investigation? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his very lengthy question and preamble. I do have a lot of sympathy for victims of fraud, and I do understand how this has impacted their lives. Nevertheless, I can tell you that the provisions pertaining to the Income Tax Act prevent me from making any comments on specific cases. And as my colleague has said, I cannot and I would never give any instructions to the agency with respect to criminal investigations. My role is to give tools, the means to the government so that the CRA can in turn conduct its audits. So out of respect for these principles of independence, politicians must never at any time, Mr. Chair, meddle in the investigations. That would be very unfortunate. That's not exactly what I asked. We can see the limits of our committee work. And the only tool that we have to shed light on all of these issues revolving KPMG would be through a public inquiry. So we're not talking about a court trial. You're the Minister of Revenue, the only one who's authorized to do this under the Income Tax Act, and you could ask for a public inquiry to get to the bottom of this. And in my opinion, this is what needs to be done. So I'm asking you once again, please, could you please ask for a public inquiry so that we get to the bottom of this matter? Thank you. Mr. Chair, you know, and as everyone knows, the committees are independent. You are masters of your own destiny. But if my colleague wants to try working in enforcement, I would encourage him to go to the RCMP. He could perhaps apply for an investigative position there. He'd be happier doing that. I'm very, very disappointed. But this, what you're calling an answer in the United States, the investigation has changed things. It's our role to do this. And my role here in the committee is to ask the minister to trigger a public inquiry to get to the bottom of this. We have raised enough issues to lead to such an inquiry, and now we're not getting an answer. You're just simply telling me to change jobs. You're just saying whatever you say off the top of your head. So will there be an inquiry, yes or no? Mr. Chair, what I will ask my colleague to do is to vote on Budget 2021, vote in favor of the budget, which contains provisions that are going to enable us to eliminate tax loopholes. It gives additional money to the CRA so that it can modernize and improve its capacity. And the agency, with all the work that we've done, with all the agreements we've signed on a country-by basis, we're going to work in collaboration with our partners. And as was said earlier, this is an issue that is very complicated. It's complex. It takes a lot of time to investigate. I do understand that people are outraged at what has happened, but we will continue our work. We will continue to try and put a halt to tax evasion. That's a priority for our government.
Thank you both. Mr. Julian will be next, but then we have a split between Mr. Falk and Ms. Jansen, followed by, if you're replacing Fraser, you're on the next round, Mr. Severo, after Jansen.
Yeah, and
Mr. Julian, 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Jansen will be going first.
Okay. Mr. Julian.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I, too, would like to wish you happy birthday. I'm sure we'll be able to celebrate together at one point. And I'd like to welcome the Minister and Mr. Gallivan. I will continue on the same line as Mr. Samaru. We're talking about thousands of Canadians who have lost all of their savings. We know, in the case of CNR, North Shell, and Montreal, that thousands of Canadians lost everything, and the system never gave them justice. So this has been going on for 6 years now, Madam Minister. So what do you say to victims such as Janet Watson, who appeared before this government, and she said that the government did absolutely nothing to protect her and nothing to prosecute the guilty parties? Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. You know, just like him, I am sincerely sorry for people who were victims of fraud, and I do understand to what extent this could have an impact on their lives. But as I said, and I will repeat it, the government respects the status of the agency, I cannot give instructions to the agency to conduct an investigation, and I would never intervene in the investigations. That's what protects the integrity of our tax system. So we will continue to do this work, and I would invite my colleague, because we want to continue forging ahead, I would invite my colleague to vote in favor of the budget. And within this budget, there are provisions that will enable us to tighten the loopholes and ensure that people pay their fair part. And if you want more information on the technical or administrative side, Mr. Gallivan can answer. I'd like to continue with the question of Panama Papers and the Bahama Papers. Tax havens. All of these documents that are available, they contain over 6,000 names of Canadian companies and businesses that benefit from a range of tax loopholes. My question is very simple. How many of these individuals and companies named in these papers over the past 6 years have been charged, and how many have been convicted, Mr. Chair? As we're dealing with people who are very wealthy, people who have the means to pay for the best tax specialists, the best lawyers, and we live in a country where rule of law prevails. And if these people use all legal means, what they do is they use legal means to not pay their fair part. And I would invite my colleague to support the budget and ensure that we will continue to have the means to do more to deal with these fraudsters. You haven't answered my question, Mr. Gallivan. How many charges have been laid and how many convictions have been reached? As was said beforehand, the investigations have not led to any convictions. So no charges, no convictions with respect to the Isle of Man. And as for the Panama Papers and the Bahama Papers, there have been no charges laid, not once. Now, you said to this committee in 2016, Madam Minister,
get information about electronic funds transfer. And regarding the CRA's audits of electronic funds transfers in excess of $10,000, how many files are now subject to criminal prosecution? How many convictions? Because when we see Sinar, when we see the lack of action with the Isle of Man scam, when we see that there's been absolutely no charges ever levied in all of these very clear violations of our tax code. Now, I remind the minister, of course, of the comments made by Bridget Unger, professor of economics, who said that this money is effectively stealing money from public coffers, and yet we've seen no action at all. So when it comes to electronic funds transfers, how many files are now subject to criminal prosecution?
Is this going to the minister, Mr.
Yes,
Gallivan?
to the minister.
Okay. Minister.
Mr. Chair, listen, as I mentioned many times since the beginning of this meeting, these are very complicated files. So I would ask my colleague to try and understand things that are quite simple. Mr. Chair, if I had the audacity to interfere in criminal investigations, I would be here appearing before the committee, and I would be criticized for doing just the opposite. Well, that's very simple. So it's a total failure. Total failure over the past 6 years. No convictions. One other question.
The tax audit files forwarded to the CRA by the Criminal Prosecution Service have decreased over the last 10 years by 86%. Can the minister explain why, when there's been no success in any of these areas that we've just talked about, why even the tax audit files forwarded by the CRA to the Canadian Criminal Prosecution Service have decreased by such a substantial amount, 86% since just before her term?
Mr. Chair, could I?
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Gallivan.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the 86% came from. There has been a decrease in the referrals because we are focusing on more serious cases. And I think it's similarly that complexity is what's driving the lack of convictions in relation to the Panama Papers. There's a high evidentiary standard. It takes the Crown a long time to put its case together. The fact that there's nothing to date shouldn't indicate that there will never be anything.
Okay, we will end it there, and we'll go to 5-minute rounds, starting with Ms. Jansen. Tamara, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Madam Minister, at committee, we've spent almost 30 hours wading through a ton of incredibly complex tax changes while studying the BIA. Everyone agrees that the Tax Act is overly complex. As a matter of fact, it's so complex that even your own team at the call centers gave Canadian taxpayers false or erroneous information 30% of the time. So even your own people don't understand it. Now, small business is spending an exorbitant amount of money and time trying to comply. And under your watch, it's become even more difficult and leaves small business owners in constant fear of accidentally being non-compliant. Would you commit today to Canadians to simplify the system so they can stop wasting their precious time trying to wade through piles of incomprehensible tax rules?
Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, what I would tell my colleague is that if she wants to change legislation, she shouldn't talk to the Minister of Revenue. She should be talking to the Minister of Finance, because it's the Minister of Finance that enacts the legislation for the agency.
I'll pass it on to my colleague. I find that an absolutely unacceptable answer.
Mr. Falk.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, for coming to committee today. It's good to see you here. I'll get right into it. Can you tell this committee how much dollars are lost each year to overseas tax evasion?
Minister?
Mr. Chair, we don't lose. We with $1 billion invested by the government, we were able to retrieve $5 million, but Mr. Gallivan can provide you with all of this administrative information that's required by my colleague.
Reports that we've the CRA's published transparently would say 800 million to 3 billion for individuals. That's the number. And then for multinationals, we're finding about 6 billion, and there's another 6 billion out there. So 800 million to 3 billion from individuals, and about 6 billion from corporations that we're not finding. The tax gap estimates say we're finding about half of it from multinationals.
Okay, well, the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates that annually we lose $25 billion in uncollected taxes due to overseas tax evasion.
I believe that number includes domestic.
Okay. It says overseas, so you should know better than I do. But regardless, okay. So Budget 2021 proposes to provide additional funding to the CRA to improve its ability to collect outstanding taxes. And yet the budget document admits the investment will only lead to the collection of about $5 billion over the course of 5 years. That's a mere $1 billion per year compared to the annual $25 billion lost. And so recouping $1 billion for $25 billion lost, Minister, to me, that's a failing grade. Your government is raising taxes on Canadians while failing to go after the taxes that are already owed. Why is that?
Minister?
Mr. Chair, I would like to remind my colleague that when we came into office, we increased taxes for the wealthy. We tried to improve the situation for the middle class. We had the child benefit. We improved the GIS. We put in place measures to help Canadians before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and we will be there after the pandemic. But I can understand that from my Conservative colleague, tax evasion is just money that he may view as being lost, but because this was not a priority for the Conservative government. When they were in office, the Conservatives, well, for them, this is not a priority for them. It's not a priority for them to deal with tax evasion.
Back to you, Ted.
In fact, I'm sorry?
Go to you. You're up. We'll give you a little more time.
Sorry, that comment just isn't accurate, Minister. In fact, CRA has launched fewer and fewer audits of large corporations over the last several years. Actually, a 30% drop in your tenure as minister. And of some 30,000 audits on large companies conducted since 2015, less than 20 of them were sent to the CRA's Criminal Investigation Division. Half of those investigations have been abandoned, and a mere one case has been referred to prosecutors. Is that really the best that this government can do?
Okay, Minister, that's the last question. Go ahead.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, in 2013-2014, the agency only conducted 43 tax evasion investigations, and in 2019-2020, we did 1,100 audits. So it's what my colleague is saying is false. It was false that we are conducting fewer investigations.
Mr. Chair, I actually got a couple more questions.
You may have, if we have time later, you'll get to them. Mr. Sabera, a 5-minute round, followed by Mr. St. Marie with 2.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Minister. It's a pleasure to have you here today and to see you. Chair, this topic is obviously a very important topic, and Chair, as you know, in our first session of Parliament, I believe Mr. Kelly was with us as well. We put together a report called the Confronting Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing, Moving Canada Forward. A beautiful report, 90 pages that we got to do, and that was a good introduction in terms of tax evasion, money laundering, and so forth. So our government has done a lot. We did a lot as a finance committee a few years ago, and it's great to see. And also with base erosion, profit shifting, with the resources that CRA has put into, the government has put into CRA to be able to undertake its aspect. Mr. Gallivan, a question for you. You sort of were able to briefly touch upon the Income Tax Act and any sort of idea of a public inquiry. Could you expand on those comments that you briefly commented on earlier, please?
That's back to the question about the power of inquiry under the Income Tax Act. I think that inquiry is not to be confused with the traditional public inquiry, as you might understand it. That power under the Act has rarely been used. We've used it once in the last 30 years, and really it's to compel testimony from witnesses who are not otherwise cooperating. So it basically involves contacting the Chief Justice of the Tax Court of Canada and obtaining a judge who will then question one specific witness. So it's seen as kind of advancing a taxpayer-specific file, and it's kind of more operational than I think the committee would like. I would also say, though, there are over 3,000 pieces of tax litigation involving kind of complex tax matters before the court today. All of those public records are accessible, and so I would suggest that there is a fairly detailed track record of the agency's activities and the kind of tax planning we're attacking already on the public record that people could make reference to.
Thank you, Mr. Gallivan. To the Minister, you've been the Minister for the Canada Revenue Agency for a number of years. You have submitted a number of budget requests to the government, and in terms of asking for resources to be provided to the Canada Revenue Agency. Can you, again, really touch upon just how much we have invested into the CRA because of what you've requested as the Minister of the Canada Revenue Agency?
je remercie vraiment
I'd like to thank my colleague, my parliamentary secretary, for this question. Our government has invested more than $1 billion into the CRA. We had to restructure the sector in the CRA to enable it to have the means and the tools required to combat tax evasion. We had loss expertise. We had to go out and hire people. We entered into country-by-country agreements. The CRA works internationally, and in the 2021 budget, we have provisions. So it's so important that we support this budget because additional tools will be provided to the agency so that we can tighten the rules, tighten the legislation that will enable us to intervene in tax evasion files.
Last question, Mr. Sabara.
Okay, back to Mr. Gallivan. Mr. Gallivan, as you know, the Canada Revenue Agency, the government has invested significant resources. Can you speak about, in terms of the ongoing, just the breadth of proceedings that the CRA has undertaken in terms of looking at aggressive tax planning, and also, of course, on tax evasion side, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll frame it in terms of the question about, the additional $1 billion a year is not making a dent, because I think it's true. The $1 billion a year is a tactical outcome. It's about the type of files that we're taking forward and the jurisprudence we're creating, which really has the strategic value. And so it's true with an objective to find $5 billion over 6 years. We're already at $5.3 billion, but that's very operational. I would again talk about the 4 cases at the Supreme Court, the many cases at the Federal Court of Appeal, and the thousands of cases at tax court, which is kind of trying to redraw the line of what acceptable tax planning is in this country. And it's the reason why Budget 2021 is now focused on additional lawyers and litigators for the Department of Justice. And so I think strategically, you see increased pressure on sophisticated tax planning industry. And I think you see increased activism by Department of Finance to close the loopholes that we're surfacing. So in that way, the fight is really, I think, now before the courts and in terms of legislation, as opposed to at the audit floor.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
We are soon going to run out of time, but Mr. St. Marie and Mr. Julian, 2.5 minutes each. Mr. Lawrence for 5, and then Ms. Kotrakis, if you have a question or any other on the government side of a question, we'll go there. Mr. St. Marie.
Oui, merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we want to get to the heart of the matter, get right down to the bottom of the thousands of people like Mrs. Watson, who was deprived of all of her money, the only solution that the experts are suggesting is a public inquiry. André Leroux, the tax specialist, has said this, and it's up to you, Madam Minister, to ask for a public inquiry and no one else. And it is because of someone who sounded the alarm in the agency that we became aware of that. It'll take a public inquiry. Are you going to trigger a public inquiry as you are authorized to do so? 234 of the Income Tax Act gives you this authority. Yes or no, Mr.? I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. As I said, I can understand the situation. I have a lot of sympathy for those who were scammed, and I know how this has affected them, but out of respect for the principles of judicial independency, the politicians cannot meddle in these investigations. It's not meddling, and Madam Minister, you're the only person in Canada who is going to be able to shed light on this and get to the bottom of this. You're the minister, and sympathy, that's not enough. Are you going to trigger a public inquiry? I understand the answer is no, but the message you're sending to all those who were scammed, you're saying, well, we sympathize, but we're not going to do anything. That's unacceptable. You're not doing anything to get to the bottom of this problem. Yes, Mr. Chair, I do understand the frustration of my colleague. And you know, Mr. Chair, my colleague, well, we are on the governing side, and we establish priorities, and something my colleague will never be able to do. And I will repeat and repeat again that the agency is independent, Mr. Chair. I cannot. Yes, you can, says Mr. Saint-Marie. You can. You don't seem to even know that you can do this. That's unacceptable.
And I don't want to intervene here, but I would suggest that members go back and look at Mr. Gallivan's answer on 231.4, in which he talked about what kind of inquiry that is under this act. I'd suggest members look at that comment, look at 231.4 in relation to the words that Mr. Gallivan mentioned earlier. Mr. Julian.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I want to get back to the revelations this morning that wealthy Canadians, the ultra-rich with fortunes of tens of millions of dollars, over the course of the past 6 years under your mandate, Madame la Ministre, there has not been a single charge laid about income tax evasion. Why have the ultra-rich in this country been treated under your ministry with kid gloves?
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, that's completely false. The super wealthy, well, the ultra-rich will not be treated with kid gloves. I have no respect for those who cheat the tax system. I have absolutely no respect for such people. And but I can tell you that if you think that we're going to resolve everything, I think you're naive, because this issue is an issue that applies to the entire world. And as I said earlier, the super wealthy are able to pay for super lawyers, super tax specialists. They can do everything to get out of paying their fair share. That's why it's important that our government be put in a position where it can give the CRA the tools that it will need so that it can conduct investigations. There are investigations underway. We don't have the results yet because the agency is doing its work. No charges, no convictions.
No convictions. We've seen it in so many cases. And we have these victims like Janet Watson who've lost their life savings in the Sinar fraud, the Mount Real fraud, the North Shield fraud. So the government and you as minister have both the Income Tax Act, but also the Inquiries Act. You have two tools to call a public inquiry into this, to get to the bottom of it, to get justice for the victims. Why do you consistently refuse to use the tools you have to actually put in place a public inquiry so that the victims can get justice?
Madam Minister.
Mr. Chair, my colleague says that there are no investigations. That's false. If my colleague had been listening to Mr. Gallivan had said earlier, he would have heard that there are situations that are before the courts right now. So we don't have the results yet. I'm not the one who's going to tell the court, well, you're going to prosecute or you're not going to prosecute. This is a completely independent process, Mr. Chair, but I would invite my colleague to not really provide misinformation to the public, because what he is saying is not true, Mr. Chair. Those are facts.
Just to line up, I'll go to Mr. Lawrence, and I want to leave room for Mr. Fast to ask a question on the end of that round. Then I'll go to Ms. Katrakis. But on this inquiry business, I have to ask this question. Do you have the tools, either Minister or Mr. Gallivan, do you have the tools to call a public inquiry under Section 2314 of the Act? Are the tools there for you to call what we would consider a public inquiry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having recently used that tool once in 30 years, it was not a public inquiry, and I don't believe it was the intent for that tool to be used for a public inquiry. I'd be happy to get a more detailed answer to you offline. But again, our single use of it was absolutely not a public inquiry, and the intent of it was to compel the taxpayer under audit to give information to the CRA as opposed to make it public.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lawrence, about 4 minutes for you and 1 for Vast.
Merci. Je voudrais continue.
Thank you. I would like to continue with my question. In October 2016, they had to declare the price of their personal residence, and why? What is the purpose of this statement or declaration? Or, Mr. Chair, the question put forward by my colleague is an administrative matter, so I'm going to ask Mr. Gallivan to answer that question. Mr. Chair, we at the CRA have made real estate a priority. When we receive this new tool, we use the information for non-residents who try to avoid paying capital gains tax on their house. We also citizens who had 2 or 3 houses who try to benefit unduly from the capital gains tax. Well, we looked into that. This is an administrative measure that we use in a sector where there is some lack of compliance.
In fact, I'd like this next question answered by the minister, if we could, as her ministry is largely an administrative ministry. Could that information collected in the principal residence exemption be used to impose a future tax on home equity? Is that possible?
Madam Minister, do you want to rephrase or put that one again?
Yeah, no
Philip?
problem. Thanks, Wayne. Sorry, I wasn't clear. There's currently, you have to declare the sale of a principal residence. Could the information collected by CRA be used in the future to help collect a home equity tax?
Madam Minister.
Mr. Chair, these are administrative questions, and I can't answer any administrative questions. That's not my role as the Minister of National Revenue, but I would turn the floor over to Mr. Gallivan to answer that question.
Theoretically, we could impose the burden on the sale. So, if I was to imagine a regime, not that I've been asked to, not that there's any government plans or policy debates about this, but right now, if I had to think about a regime, I would say we'd probably want the lawyers who are involved to be responsible for administering the tax. So we probably wouldn't rely on information from the taxpayer. We'd probably feel better with a regime that was driven by something new, which would be the lawyers doing it. So I'm not sure this existing database would be of any use, even if that were to ever happen.
William Shakespeare once wrote, "Me doth think you protest too much," and it reminded me, with all respect, Mr. Gallivan, of my 7-year-old when he's caught doing something guilty, immediately saying, "I didn't do anything. I never did anything." But I do appreciate your service and have respect for that. Getting back to the tax evasion issue. We have literally billions of dollars that we're not getting from tax evaders, and that's not me saying that. It's not Mr. Julian, not Mr. St. Pierre. That's just fact. However, the government spent its first couple of years trying to collect from Main Street, from small business owners, which is a much, much less amount. Could you confirm for me, one, the amount of money that we're losing because of tax evaders, and then the money that we got by harassing innocent, hardworking small business owners from Canada's Main Street?
So the numbers I gave previous are the ones that I focus on, which is roughly a $6 billion tax gap for multinational enterprises. That's a small group in Canada. and we have the resources to audit and litigate with them. The second number, the 800 million to 3 billion, that's a little more difficult of population to define, high net worth individuals. As I said, we agree that there are still billions more to get. But whether we're getting half or 2/3 of it, we feel that we are making progress. And we also feel by taking the challenge to the courts, a strong message of deterrence is being sent. And also it sets up finance to kind of close the loopholes. In terms of Main Street, the audit function that I lead, which is roughly 11,000 of the CRA's employees, we do very little audits of people who earn less than 100K. Our audits are increasingly risk-based. The average audit conducted by my shop is $170,000 in discrepancies identified or gross tax. That's twice as high as it was in the past. So I would say because of data and analytics, more and more of our results come from high net worth and multinationals. Roughly 2,000 multinationals and 16,000 high net worth individuals make up 60% of the audit billings we give a year. The 2 million other businesses and the 26 million other Canadians represent the other 40%. So I think we're increasingly focused on the upper end. And that is really where I think from a fairness perspective and a deterrence perspective, we're trying to stay. But as noted, the results are slow because these people have pushed back through the courts. And that's why we have 4 cases of the Supreme Court. That's why we have so many cases at the Federal Court of Appeal. I have one file where the taxpayer has 53 pieces of litigation related to the audit. Like we haven't even finished the audit, and there are 53 distinct pieces of litigation they've thrown at us to throw sand in the gears. And so I would describe a situation where I think we're with this committee and being focused on the sophisticated actors. Obviously a difference of opinion on the pace of our progress, but we're definitely not focused on Main Street and increasingly using data to be more selective when we have to.
Okay, I've allowed a long answer there. Mr. Fast, you have one question, and we'll go to Ms. Kotrakis to close it off. We're over the minister's time by a bit. Mr. Fast.
Yes, I just wanted to ask the minister about a couple of programs that are tools in her toolkit for tracking down those who are evading and avoiding taxes. There's the Offshore Tax Informant Program. Minister, are you familiar with that program?
Minister?
Oui, je suis au courant de ce programme.
Yes, I'm aware of that program.
And how successful has it been?
Mr. Gallivan could answer that question.
How successful has that been?
We're approaching $100 million in identified unpaid taxes. Plus, when we find those cases, we mine them for others. So ROI, in terms of ROI and the tactical benefit, tens of millions of dollars, cresting 100 million. In terms of deterrence, harder to track, but it's definitely there.
What about the mandatory reporting of international EFTs to Mr. Gallivan?
It has identified some taxpayers that were flying under the radar and is part of the reason why we have more than 1,000 audits. In fact, our challenge isn't identifying taxpayers we should audit, but it is getting the audits done. And that's why Budget 2021 gave us new resources for litigation. We have near 100% of these taxpayers who litigate during the audit to obstruct our efforts to get the information we need, which is why they take longer and why we have to give them more time.
So, Mr. Chair, my purpose for raising those programs, and there are others, both of those programs were implemented by, Stephen Harper. So, Minister, I just wanted to say to you, you came to our meeting, started off by attacking conservatives, then you told Mr. St. Marie to go fly a kite and go talk to the RCMP.
Here now.
Minister, when are you going to take personal responsibility for the file that you've had since 2015?
Minister, we'll give you some time here.
Mr. Chair, I can tell you that this whole tax evasion file is something that is very important to me. It is so important, therefore, that we invest money into this program. And I would invite the Conservatives, Mr. Chair, to vote in favor of the budget that has been tabled so that we'll be able to have more tools so that we can tighten the rules and combat tax evasion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, last questions to you, Ms. Kotrakis.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming here this afternoon to answer our questions. Madam Minister, we have discussed to great length the way that the former Conservative government made significant cutbacks in this fight against tax evasion. It was up to our government to rebuild, which was dismantled by the Conservative government. But I'm wondering if you could take a few minutes to talk about the future of our fight against tax evasion. What's the next priority of our government? Mr. Chair, I'd like to really like to thank my colleague for her question. You know, the CRA, and this was spelled out in my mandate letter, we have a plan that will enable us to work with our partners internationally, but we also work closely with other departments. We work with finance, justice. We also work with public security to deal with these tax evaders and what's presented in our budgets. And it's why it's so important that we pass this budget. All colleagues sitting around the table need to support this budget so that we can ensure that we can eliminate these loopholes and prevent people from preventing tax. We also want to increase and improve the agency's ability to fight against tax avoidance. We want to modernize and improve regulations respecting tax evasion. This is a priority. We're forging ahead. We're on the right path, but we do need everyone's cooperation. We need to ensure that, because it is a priority of the entire government to fight against tax evasion. Thank you, Madam Minister.
Mr. Gallivan. And speaking on Budget 2021, our government announced new policy measures such as new mandatory disclosure rules that will build on previous investments to enhance our fight against tax evasion. What are some other policy changes that you see as necessary in the government's fight against tax evasion?
Madam Minister, and that'll be the last question.
Or Mr. Gallivan.
Mr. Chair, I think it was directed to me. That's
okay, go ahead.
I certainly think the powers of oral interview that allow our auditors to interview officials of businesses to get their position on the record is an important change announced in the budget. There were 15 BEPS action items, action 2 on interest deductibility, action 4 on hybrid mismatches, are areas that Budget 2021 is coming in on to tighten the rules. Also, the general anti-avoidance rule, which is a form of anti-avoidance super rule that sits on top of the rest of the Income Tax Act, is also under review for tightening. And that's an important tool in our toolkit. And so I would say all of those items announced in the budget are pretty important. And in addition to the CRA using it, I think just their presence in the budget sends a signal to tax practitioners and businesses that it's time to pay your taxes.
All right, we will have to end it there. We went considerably over the minister's time. We, as I told a couple of committee members, we don't have officials for the next hour, but there's a couple of things we have to deal with. So, Madam Minister and Mr. Gallivan, look, thank you for your appearance today. I think if we look at the record, there's a lot of information there that we can glean out of it. And all the best to you both this summer. So, on behalf of the committee, thank you very much. We'll release you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same to you.
Okay,
Et Monsieur le Président, j'aurais un appel au règlement.
On a point of order, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Easter.
Point of order. I was just going to say before, if I could, Mr. St. Marie, before you do that, Mr. Fast had asked on the English translation for your motion at the last meeting. I believe that has been sent out to committee members. I think it was the wrong one first, but I believe it's there now. And I just want to make sure that we have consent that that is the motion. I don't think we need to move it again. Are we okay with that? Is there any objection? All right, we're okay with that. Your point of order, Mr. St. Marie, and then Mr. Julian has a motion.
Because of the translation, I believe the minister wanted to say something to you before I go ahead with my point of order. I think the minister wanted to say something to you.
Elle est partie. Elle vous a salué.
So anyway, she had words for you before she disconnected. I'm doing a point of order with respect to the interpretation of Mr. Gallivan gave to Section 231.4. Obviously, I don't agree with the way he's interpreted it, and I'd like to say that Mr. Leroux, one of the most a very well-renowned tax specialist here in Canada, testified, and he said that the public inquiry could be carried out pursuant to this section. I'd like to read this section, and I'd also like to remind you that the power to investigate under this section is this a decision that was confirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada. So this is a recognized section. So for everyone's understanding, I'm going to read the section. For the implementation of this act, authorize an individual, whether it be an official from the CRA, to conduct any investigation deemed to be necessary on any matter whatsoever with respect to the implementation of the said act. So the minister does, in fact, have the authority to trigger an inquiry under this section. That's what the specialist told us, the specialist, Mr. Leroux, who testified before us, and this was confirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada. So I wanted this to be clear. And that was what my point of order was all about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think really we're not so much into a point of order as a point of a difference of opinion. Do we want a written response from CRA on that matter? Or okay, could I will ask CRA, you put that into evidence, Mr. St. Marie. We have what Mr. Gallivan said. Let's get a response from committee members on how they look at both and see where that leaves us. It is a difference of opinion. Okay, then Mr. Julian, you had a motion you mentioned to me earlier that you wanted to put, and I expect that I think the bells are likely going to ring anytime, but in any event, let's start into it.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And actually, I think we've probably got about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And I believe that Mr. St. Marie wants to come back to an issue as well. But I've already circulated the motion, and I'll read it for the record, and then add an amendment to facilitate things. And this is following discussions with Mr. Sobera. That the committee requests that the government initiate a public inquiry under the Income Tax Act, and I would add, or the Inquiry Act, to investigate tax planning by KPMG or any of its subsidiaries in the Isle of Man, the possible involvement of the sword companies Shashqua, Qatar, Shaw, Spatha, and Parisia corporations, and to investigate tax fraud in the Sinar, North Shield, and Mount Real cases, and any possible links with the KPMG Isle of Man tax planning and or Isle of Man's sword companies, and that this be reported to the House. The reason why I'm adding under the Inquiries Act, because that gives the government a scope to use either tool. And since there is some dispute around the use of the Income Tax Act, my interpretation, I would certainly agree with Mr. St. Marie and Mr. Leroux on that, but it gives the government a broader scope to use the tool that is most appropriate. The most important thing here is that we know from the testimony we had from Janet Watson, from the really important journalism we've seen both with Enquête in Radio-Canada and also Fifth Estate in CBC, that people, thousands of Canadians were defrauded, that money was taken overseas. We have a responsibility, and we've undertaken that to get to the bottom of it as much as we can. But to date, we have asked KPMG many questions, have received often evasive or incorrect responses or no responses at all. And so I believe, given that we know what we know, that we all share an interest in getting to the bottom of this, and we all share an interest in seeking justice for the victims of these colossal frauds. $500 million, people losing their life savings. You can only imagine somebody who saved up, like Janet Watson, $70,000, $68,000 of her life savings, and lost it all due to this fraud. So I believe we have a responsibility to pass this motion. Ultimately, it is a request. A request is a request, but it does seek justice for the victims, and I believe that's what every member of this committee wants to see as well.
Okay, it's on the floor. Do we have an agreement on the Inquiries Act? Are we okay with that, or do we need an official amendment? I don't hear any objections. Okay, it's open for debate. Who's up? Don't everybody speak at once. Did I see your hand, Julie? Nobody's up. Julie's just waving her hands around. All right. Are we seeing it as agreed to?
With that modification, Mr. Chair, under the Income Tax Act or the Inquiries Act.
Yeah, and the Inquiries Act is the right name, is it? It's
Yes.
not the Public Inquiries Act. Which do we know the specific name? I kind of thought it was the Public Inquiries Act. Does any of the analysts know what the proper name is? Because we want the proper name in. I see Brett looking. We'll just wait a minute. I think all the analysts are working on it there. We want the specific name of the act so that we're not wrong.
I believe it's the
Yes.
Inquiries Act.
The Inquiries Act, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, then that is agreed to. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, that's dealt with, and we'll put that to the government. Did I hear St. Gabriel, you had another point you want to raise?
Non, c'est bon.
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to be done in time to the vote, and we don't have to rush. This will be our Mr. Julian.
Just a point of personal privilege,
Yep.
Wayne. This doesn't often work well on Zoom, but I would like to wish you a very, very happy birthday and thank you for all your amazing work as our chair.
Yeah, good. Thank you all. But these birthdays, every birthday you have, you're older now, but it's better than the alternative for sure. Some constituent brought me in a nice birthday cake, so I can't complain. Anyway, thank you all. Thanks for the happy birthday wishes, and have a wonderful summer all. We may be seeing each other over the summer. You never know. All the best, and meeting adjourned.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Wayne.
Happy birthday, Wayne.
Happy birthday, Wayne.
you.